So it's really interesting. When I was watching the video you had of the EVPs, it said that it's in a mountain. And I recall seeing these other videos with this guy who's looking at a formation in the Sahara Desert called the Eye of Africa. And it seems to be kind of in a little bit of a mountainous area, but it's this kind of depression in the desert. It's very large. It has these concentric circles inside of it, which match Plato's description of Atlantis from a long time ago, and it really made me think of that when I saw that EVP.
Thank you.
So the Atlantis one, I've been fascinated by the concept of Atlantis. Ever since I had these conversations with Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock about the Younger Dryas impact theory, and this concept that somewhere in roughly around 11,000, 12,000 years ago, we were hit by a series of comets. And it's pretty evident that that's a fact. If you do the core samples of the Earth, they find this nuclear glass all over the Earth that exists in that time period. And it seems like something happened that reset civilization. And there's very little evidence of advanced civilizations before that up until recently, up until the last couple of decades. They started uncovering things like Göbekli Tepe and all these other structures that are clearly from more than 12,000 years ago. And they're really complex and really large with enormous stones. And it's sort of caused people to rethink the history of the Earth and the history of human civilizations. And Atlantis has always been the big one. That has been the one that everybody talked about, was this incredibly advanced civilization, and no one could figure out where it is.
Right.
Or if it was real.
But I think it represented a civilization that was doing great things. Atlantis was said to be a kingdom made up of, or an empire, made up of 10 kingdoms. And then there was the lost city of Atlantis, which was the capital, which was said to be made up of concentric circles, 2 of water, 3 of land, and essentially that they were obliterated by a cataclysm, as passed down by Plato, although it's worth mentioning that Plato got the story of Atlantis from Solon, who was his uncle separated by 6 generations. But what most people don't realize is that Solon had traveled to Egypt, and so it's the ancient Egyptians is where that tale comes from, which makes it even more bizarre, because I would argue that the most spectacular ancient civilization is the Egyptians. I mean, no disrespect to the Romans.
Hard to deny.
To travel to Egypt. When I first saw this, I was like, what the fuck is that? By the way, you see that white? All those white blemishes? That's salt. This was under the ocean, is that humans were doing spectacular things, and a cataclysmic event happened called the Younger Dryas, and reset something for somebody. So what you're looking at is approximately 250 miles inland in the total barren desert of Mauritania, Africa. So Atlantis was said to be, like we said, multiple rings of, water and land. However, it was said to open to the sea to the south. So you can see this from space. Astronauts use it as a locator, and they weren't really familiar or aware of it until the Gemini missions in the early 1960s. Go to Google Earth, you'll be able to find this quite quickly. It stands out. And it's why they call it the Eye of Africa or the Eye of the Sahara. All that white is salt. In fact, I have a friend, Josh Gertson, that went out there and tasted that shit off the fucking ground. That's salt. A lot of people don't know, Joe, that the Sahara Desert wasn't a thing until approximately 5,000 years ago. It's only in the last several years, and by the way, I'm quoting MIT research here, that the Sahara goes back and forth from green to desert approximately every 20,000 years. They believe it has something to do with the Earth's tilt, and that's worth discussing. Sahara Desert was a lush green tropical paradise which had the largest known freshwater lakes ever known to have existed. For example, Mega Lake Chad, which it's like 3 times more water surface than all of the North American Great Lakes combined. It's a big sucker.
Holy shit. How's it not an ocean?
I know.
Well, freshwater?
It was when it existed, and that was at the time when the Sahara was green. And it also had some of the largest known rivers that were known to have existed throughout the world. I think it'd still be ranked 10th today or something like that. That the fact that salt is on top of that dirt, to me, is indicative that the ocean flowed over here far more recently than what people think.
How wide is this structure?
So the circles themselves is about 14 2.5 miles across. However, if you go the complete shebang, the whole circle itself is just shy of 30 miles.
So the whole thing is 30 miles, which would be like the size of a city.
Is it big enough to be a city with possibly millions of people? Because the way it was described is that it was a city that was said to be busy all day, all night, rich in trade, with languages spoken from all over. So I'm like, okay, that would imply millions of people. I mean, if a city's busy all day and all night, I think of large metropolitan areas like New York, Chicago, London, whatever. And so if this was indeed an ancient or a site of an ancient civilization, well then it would have, I mean, we're obviously not going to have skyscrapers, so it would have to be an area big enough to sustain that many people, and the Richat structure certainly does.
And so the idea would be that this would lead out to the ocean, and that these circles would be where the water is, and the ridges would be where the structures are, where the houses and the buildings are.
Yep. And people will say, well, where is that stuff now? I'm like, well, look at it. It got obliterated.
Yeah, those people should shut the fuck up. When did they think Atlantis was?
11,600 is allegedly when it was destroyed, which mirrors the Younger Dryas climate catastrophe. Because, so Plato had, so this is 600 BC, and Plato said that it happened 9,000 years earlier, so that would be 11,600 years ago, which coincides with the Younger Dryas climate catastrophe, which makes it so compelling to me.
Definitely know that the Younger Dryas impact theory is extremely plausible. There are, without a doubt, like many impact points on Earth where they find this tritonite, this nuclear glass, which you can get either from a nuclear explosion or you get it from some sort of a meteor impact, large scale, all over the continent. And we know that all over the planet, I should say. We know that happened. Like, this is like real hardcore geological evidence. If we know that there were structures before that, which we do now because of Göbekli Tepe and a few other places that they're reasonably sure were pre 11,000 years ago, 12,000 years ago, then we know that something was around back then that was very sophisticated. How sophisticated, we don't know.
I asked 11 ethereal beings what they could tell me about Atlantis. This is what they said. This is all I could decipher. Angels Protector and the 8. What can you tell me about Atlantis? I mean, is it true that demons and fallen angels, same thing, are hiding there? And just anything in general, what can you tell me? Okay, thank you. I'm sorry if I cut you off. Make sure it's recording. What can you tell about Atlantis? Is it true that demons and fallen angels and things are hiding there? And just anything in general, what can you tell me? Okay.